Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Shear, for those people who don't know me. I've been associated with the IVPD from the day it was simply a seed in somebody's mind. It was a conception, and that's when we put the whole idea of IVPD and what it could mean way back many, many years ago. I think it was about 2002 when the seeds were planted, and I had brainstorming sessions with Larry van Niekerk, who, by the way, is alive and well and living in New Zealand now. And I'm a financial advisor, although my background is in engineering, which makes me very numerate and very analytical, so I think I have a good understanding of things. And it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege working with the IVPD and the associated members to be able to offer them the various services that we do as part of our daily business. The presentation I'm going to go through today, for which I'm under tremendous pressure, I need to tell you about, and what I'm going to do this time is forget about all things of legislation and technicalities and insurances. All I'm going to do is tell you some stories. And from the stories, you're going to get a very, very good understanding of what it is that I do. So I'm going to tell you about David Jones, who has a veterinary hospital. And he has patients and he has clients, and there's doctors and surgeons, there's admin staff, there's nurses, kennelmen, and something else. Service personnel. So he also is a participating member of the IVPD Provident Fund, and I, in parentheses, would like to hope that all of you are going to be members of the IVPD Provident Fund. It's the right thing to do. It's good for your staff. It's good for you. You'll become a very, very attractive employer as well. Plus, you are helping the IVPD as well. These are the benefits that are there, and I'm going to touch on some of those things, and I've got some brochures which you can go through at your leisure afterwards. Those people would like to know more about the various components of the Provident Fund, the group life, the educational protector benefit, it's a global education protector benefit, the income continuation benefit, severe illness, family funeral benefit, and the retirement provisioning. So the first story is all about Jonas, who, kennelman, he died suddenly. He was a sole breadwinner. He supported a wife and 3 children. He'd been with Dr. Jones for 16 years, and he was earning 9,500 Rand a month. In the event of that death, the fund provided him with a tax-free lump sum of 20,000 Rand, which was given to the family as a funeral benefit, just simply taking some of the sting away from the financial burden that an unexpected funeral places on the family. He was then awarded another 342,000 Rand, which is part of the group life, in accordance with his wishes. You nominate your beneficiaries, and the money is paid out tax-free lump sum to those people. In addition to that, there was 273,000 Rand sitting in his Provident Fund, his retirement fund, which was also paid out to the family on the nominated beneficiaries that he'd put on his beneficiary nomination form. In addition to that, those 3 children were guaranteed to have an education up to and including the completion of tertiary education, a 4 years tertiary education, which is the global education protector, that removed a huge amount of stress, worry, and burden from the family as to how that, first of all, they'd cope without a breadwinner, and secondly, what would happen about the children's education. That benefit, all in all, is approximately R1 million. Then the next story tells about Jane, who was the bookkeeper in Dr. Jones's practice, and she had a bit of a tumble off her mountain bike one day. She was on a tricky trail. Her injuries would mean that she was not going to work for 6 to 8 months, and she'd only joined the practice about a year ago. Prior to the accidents, she is single, she was 28, no dependents, salary of 28,000 Rand per month. In her particular situation, Dr. Jones paid her 1 month sick leave, as he would have to do in terms of the employment equity rules, and he then paid her a month worth of normal leave, so she's sick leave and normal leave. The fund then provided her with 21,000 Rand, which represents 75% of her income, as an income, which was going to be paid from the 3 months after the event was declared, plus another 1,400 Rand a month was paid to her Provident Fund after the 3rd month, and that was effectively a benefit to her of 22,000 Rand 22,400 Rand per month. There's her bike. It's all restored now. Interestingly, on an aside, Jane's parents were particularly concerned about what had happened to their daughter, and they'd done some calculations because some financial calculations, as they realized that the burden would fall upon them should Jane not be able to work again. And this is the way they calculated. They showed that with a current income of 28,000 Rand a month, and if she couldn't work for the next 37 years, that means that with an inflation of 6%, oh my goodness, the capitalized value of all those earnings, just adding it up every year, 28,000 Rand per month for this year, 28,000 Rand per month, plus 6% in the next year and 6% in the year after, that's worth 42.8 million Rand that they would have to provide for. And the question also is, would they be alive to be able to provide it until Jane reached 65? If I took inflation out of it, just to make the arithmetic very simple, you just take 28,000 Rand, multiply that by 12 to get the annual salary, multiply that by 37, and you're going to see that is the total amount of money excluding inflation. What this really shows is the effect of inflation on a capitalized lump sum. And that amount, by the way, excluded any provision for retirement. This is not working very, very well. Am I doing something wrong here? Ah, there we go. All right, but that's not all. The story got a little bit worse. Jane's head injuries meant that she couldn't get back to work, and she would not be able to practice as an accountant again. It doesn't go into the fact that she might be able to do something else, but professionally she couldn't act as an accountant any further. So the fund came to her rescue, and as a result of her not being able to do her nominated occupation, the income protection was increased from the 21,000 Rand to the 28,000 Rand. That's her full nominated salary at the date of the accident. The insurer contribution on behalf of the employer added up to another 1,400 Rand, plus Jane's own contribution to the Provident Fund, as it was in the previous scenario, also 1,400 Rand a month. So the total value for Jane under those circumstances of not being able to continue with a regular nominated occupation was over 30,000 Rand per month. And she would have her retirement protected as well. So what the conclusion to that is, her income is now secure to 65. That's when the income protection stops. And she had all the inflation increases, and retirement capital was secured. The next story deals with Anita, who's a veterinary nurse, who worked for 19 years and was a key member of the team in post-operative care. She was diagnosed with cancer, which happens to be a familial situation. She's 49, she's married, she has 2 adult children, so there were no dependents there. Her salary was 16,000 per month, and she was also on the Discovery Health medical aid. Within days of the diagnosis, I was notified that there was a possible severe illness claim here. Anita was devastated, but I was able to assure her that the family would not be wiped out financially. The oncology treatment would come to around about 320,000 Rand. Her medical aid covered oncology up to 200,000 Rand. The severe illness claim, which is part of the fund, was 1 month's salary. That's 12 times 16,000 per month. 1 year's salary coming to 192,000 Rand, which meant that Anita now had a surplus of 72,000 Rand to deal with additional expenses. I think I'll be finished by now. There we are, but that's not the whole story. Within 14 days of the date of the claim being settled, the benefit was reinstated, which made way for another claim to be processed regardless of the severity or the type of claim that would come through. If Anita had to be off work for more than 3 months, she would also be eligible for the income benefit, continuation claim, similar to the story I told you for Jane, of another 75% of her salary. And all other benefits would remain intact. That's her group life. Everything else would be there, including her provident fund provisioning would stay there exactly as it was before. This one is the last component and the last story which deals with the Provident Fund. We now look at some of the retirement stories, and this is a fellow, James, who is 61. He wants to retire. His salary was 29,000 Rand per month. His fund value, sitting in the IVPD, was worth 500,000 Rand. He told me that he thinks he needs about 20,000 Rand a month to live on, and that should escalate at 6% per annum. In addition to all that, he needed to replace his car. And he did say that he would like to have an overseas trip to celebrate his retirement. He and his wife go away for a lovely trip. He heard somewhere in the grapevine that one of the local banks is offering 13% per annum. So he consulted with me just to verify some of these facts and see if the whole thing is true and realizable. However, he then added that he had an RA worth 750,000 Rand. He had unit trust worth another $250,000 Rand. Goodness, his wife assets, all in all, came to about R1 million. That's a total of 2.5 million Rand if you add those up together with a R500,000 Rand in the Provident Fund. And what he then did is he said, right, if I've got 2.5 million Rand and I get this 13% that I can get in the bank, that is effectively 27,000 Rand per month. Surely I've got to be okay. Well, here comes the reality check. Option one, if he wanted to retire on 20,000 Rand per month, the best he'd be able to do, considering that there's such things as tax, inflation, and underpinning investments, income would last for 5 years and then would taper almost to nothing. The alternative would be option two, to retire on 10,500 Rand a month for the full expected term, which would then inflate at 6% per annum and give him a sustainable income. So what it actually shows is that the notion of being on a provident fund or even having a retirement annuity is not the full story, and it needs to be looked at in the light of a whole lot of other drivers that are important to understanding how retirement funding works. And what I discovered yesterday is that while I was driving back from Sun City, that yesterday, the 29th of October, was the International Day of the Cat. And I thought that that little logo just looked so good and appropriate for vets as well. Anyhow, the important thing is to understand what it is that we do. We're into holistic analysis, dealing with risk, retirement, estate, tax, and investments. I have got some brochures here for those people who want more detail, which describes every one of the benefits in this little red box over here in the front. We can hand them out just a little later on. And the good news is, in the light of even we have rotten investment performances right now, I've just got a wonderful tranche now for IVPD members, whereby with a minimum investment of 100,000 Rand, you can get a capital guarantee, a capital guarantee if the markets go down, that you never lose your money, an 85% up as the guaranteed minimum for investments that are positive, and if investments are greater than 85%, you get the full upside. The additional incentive and sweetener to the whole deal is the fact that anybody coming in before the 15th of November will get a capital guarantee of at least 101%, and depending on the size of the investment, going up to 103%. I'll send that out with the next IVP letter. Yours. Super.